The question is that this House do now adjourn. Mr Andy Sawford.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm very pleased to have this opportunity to lead a special debate on the future of fire services in Corby and East Northamptonshire. My constituents are extremely concerned about plans drawn up by the current administration at Northamptonshire County Council to scrap one of Corby's 2 fire engines and cut the firefighter team at the station, which serves Corby and much of East Northamptonshire. The County Council are planning reductions in the Northamptonshire Fire and Rescue Service operating budget of £1.6 million over 3 years, equivalent to a cut of 7.5% in the current operating budget. This is in addition to cuts in excess of £1 million already implemented under this government, which resulted in a loss of 31 posts. The strategy for delivering these cuts is simple. Cut at Corby, cut an engine, and cut the crew. The Council have been running a consultation which closes today, in which they are not considering cuts to services in any other part of the county. The impact is all on Corby. A one-option consultation isn't a consultation at all. It's a PR exercise. The Council's plans will take out a standard fire appliance and the associated crew from Corby and replace this with a new Cobra intervention vehicle crewed by only 2 firefighters. Now, I've discussed this with Martin Emberson, the head of the Fire and Rescue Service in the county, who has confirmed that these changes would not add any new capability to Corby. Cobra-based technology can already be deployed from the Corby station. Indeed, I have seen it myself. It would significantly deplete manning levels at the station and result in a degradation of the response service locally. The key concern is that in practical terms, these changes will mean that if firefighters arrive on the scene of a major fire, they may face a delay of up to 20 minutes before they can enter the building. The strength of public opinion against these plans is huge. Thousands of people have signed an online petition organised by local firefighters. And over the last few weeks, over 200 people have responded to my appeal for input for tonight's speech, because I want the Minister to hear directly from my constituents in their own words. I hope that the Minister will listen to them and that she will agree to meet with me, local firefighters and the County Council to see if we can find an alternative to these current plans. Now, I appreciate that money is tight for local councils, but the County Council have not explored other options. Firefighters tell me there are other ways of making savings, but the County Council isn't interested in exploring them. Now, I want to start by saying, Madam Deputy Speaker, that my constituents really do appreciate the excellent work of Corby firefighters and those who cover East Northamptonshire. Graham Scotney says, our firefighters do an amazing job from the front line, firefighting and accident rescue, right through to fire prevention and education. Terry Lester says, firefighters attend many emergency situations such as road traffic accidents, plane crashes, train crashes, building or scaffolding collapse, all aspects of flooding, chemical spills, releasing people trapped in machinery, rescuing animals. Lynn says simply, we must protect them as they protect us. Of the County Council's proposals, Anne Brown tells me they're blooming terrible. Disgusting, says Brian Robson, Janet Keeney, Liz McCormack, Dave Holt and Robert Nelson. Uncannily stupid, says Ian Murray. Paul Cross calls the plans insane. Kenny Keyes, Albin Wallace and Lisa Chong say these plans are a disgrace. Tim Wadley felt that the proposals put people's lives at risk, a phrase also used by Robert Anderson. David Laws says these are ludicrous proposals, and as a Corby resident for more than 60 years, he told me he objects strongly to this ridiculous idea. Julie Kelly says that fire cover is not a nice to have, but a resource that is there to save lives. This is just stupidity, says Michael Gray. Jean Addison and John Ashman both said that the council proposals are short-sighted. Christine Larkman said, it is repulsive to put money before lives. Less sometimes really does mean less, and that's exactly what's being offered, says Mark Loney. Ian Foreman is very troubled by the plans. Tim Hawke says they are incompetent and inept. Ridiculous, says Tom Cardwell and George Jenkins. Damien Roche agreed, saying it is a ridiculous cut to make that endangers the lives of the residents of Corby and the surrounding area. Chris Godbold said, is this a thought-through idea? I agree with Kim Denham, Madam Deputy Speaker, when she says that there has been a lack of sound judgment here. Shayna Denson says this is crazy. The service should be expanded, not cut. Idiotic, says Valerie Walker. It shows a lack of civic responsibility, says Keith Jenkins. Ludicrous, says Paul Gray, Niall McAllister and Samantha Timms. Ronald Aston calls it scandalous. Anne Huntington says it is iniquitous, terrible and a travesty. It makes no sense at all in the view of Robert Burridge. It is a terrible idea, says Jane Gardner. A crazy idea, agrees Sally Barlow. Many commented that the cuts would come at a time when Corby is the fastest growing town in the UK with the highest birth rate in England. Helen Moore mentioned the new development at Priors Hall. Paul Young highlighted the growth of the Oakley Vale area. Many of my constituents believe that rather than looking to cut Corby's fire service, we should be talking about how we meet the needs of an expanding population. These points were all raised and reinforced by John Walker, Elizabeth Mullen, Madeline Whiteman, Joseph Burlington, Geraldine Olive, Tony Killam, Kelly Farrer, Irene Hamilton, Jane Parcell, Kirsty Lane, Gail Corby, Anita Few, Ian Duncan, and others who contacted me, like Trevor Haynes, James Campbell, Anita Hamley, Simon Neves, Melissa Roberts, Margaret Browning, Linda Bingham, Anne Kieran, Stan Gemmell, Barry Tempest, Sue Clues, David Smith and Wendy Finn, all who took the time to share their views. Andrew Tyre says, if anything, we need possibly more cover, not less. Corby's firefighters had a busy time over Christmas, with a large fire in the town shopping centre, along with a number of other serious incidents. Fortunately, there were no fatalities, but my constituents are worried that cuts to the service will put the safety of the public and the firefighters themselves at risk. Bernadette O'Keefe says people's lives will be put at risk. Vicky Sidwell says no amount of money saved will be worth risking people's lives for. Helga Ramsey told me the prospect of the time taken to reach a fire being extended is unacceptable. David Hamilton says they waffle about it not endangering lives and the service being maintained. I don't understand how this can be the case. David, you are right to be sceptical. Debbie Graham thinks that this would be putting people's lives at risk. Mel Munton is the manager of one of Hanover's sheltered schemes in Corby. She said, it concerns me very much that because of this decision, if ever a major fire emergency happened here at Swan Gardens, many of my residents could be put in danger, serious danger. Many being wheelchair-bound or with poor mobility could lose their lives. The 20-minute wait for another fire tender to arrive could be disastrous. Michael May says the plans put costs before essential services. Paul Barmer says, if we saved money but lost one life, then we would have saved nothing. John Holton says the reason for maintaining cover is simple. It saves lives. And lives will be particularly at risk when there is a large incident, because as Bob Scott points out, there will be fewer firefighters. Or when two or more incidents require a fire service response at the same time. Susan Bird asks what happens when two fires occur at once. Jeff May says what happens if the fire service is called to two incidents in Corby at the same time. Paul Garvey stresses that a fire can take hold and kill in minutes, so every second counts and this cannot be allowed to happen. Danny McAvoy highlights that the plans will leave Corby with only 2 firefighters to deal with some incidents. Mark Browning raises concerns about the ability of the firefighters to respond should more than one fire break out in the town. Sonia Barker says, I think it is ridiculous cutting the fire service to just one engine. If there was a very major fire and only one to go out to the call, you'd have to get more from around the county, and that will be losing time and making things even harder. And this comes at a time when many of the retained fire engines in nearby towns are frequently not on the run and not available. It is Corby's 2 engines that provide the resilience for the whole of Northamptonshire. Take that away, and this doesn't just put lives and firefighters at risk in my constituency, it does so in neighbouring areas. The Corby Fire Service covers many villages surrounding the town. My constituents who live in these rural areas are rightly concerned about the plans. Jacqueline Kay highlights residents in her village, Gretton. She says, we have not been asked about these plans. How will it affect us? Lloyd Caddock says, how long will it take to get to villages for serious fires? John Mellish points out that lots of rural areas depend on the Corby Fire Service, and they do, going right out to the border of Lincolnshire, right across to the border of Cambridgeshire. Skip Sortland is worried that if they can get rid of a second engine in Corby, then they can reduce the fire service in other parts of the county just as easily. But the truth at the moment, Skip, is they're not even considering what options there are in the rest of the county. This is all focused on Corby, a one-option consultation. Darren Whittaker believes the cuts will clearly affect the level of protection that Corby and its surrounding villages require and deserve. Peter MacDonald says, bearing in mind that the Corby station provides cover for a vast amount of rural communities in the northeast of the county, it is not only the people of Corby whose lives are being jeopardised, it is a disgrace to hoodwink the general public by saying they're replacing an appliance with new high-tech firefighting equipment. Alison Tootle says, this is a real problem for Corby and the surrounding villages, and she's right. Many people commented to me on the impact these plans will have on Corby's business community. Marion Anderson says, a cut in fire service personnel will undermine the attractiveness of Corby as a destination for business and put lives at risk. Dave Fox, a resident of East Northants, looking across to Corby, says it is a highly commercially productive sector of the county. Now, indeed, Corby has been identified as the manufacturing capital of the country, and that has to be weighed as part of the fire risk. Janice Harper points out that if crews are unable to take swift action, there is a cost to businesses and, in consequence, to the community. If businesses are unable to continue, it means loss of jobs and damages the local economy. William Rennick, who told me that he was responsible for finalising a report in 1985 on the fire service in Northamptonshire, looking at risk, says that removing one pump and replacing it with a questionable vehicle will place the industry and commerce of Corby at risk. Robert Thorogood says Corby and District represent a large part of our business infrastructure. He's a business owner in the area. He says the size of the population and the businesses there demand both pumps. Robert Leecroft says as the number of industrial units in the area increases, the chance of fires involving chemicals, plastics and so on increases, and these need to be tackled as fast as possible. So reducing the number of engines available is a very backward step. And there have, Madam Deputy Speaker, been fires in many of our factories in the area. Les Vargason makes the point that it is not just fires. Corby is surrounded by arterial roads where the fire brigade is always in attendance due to the large number of accidents. They cannot be in two places at one time with just one unit. Now, Tony Banks believes that these proposals show the government wants to return Britain to the 30s with the decimation of public services. Kevin Morrissey asks if savings could be made elsewhere by the council. It's a good question. Eleanor McEwen sees a different motive. She says it is typical Tory councillors targeting a Labour town. Paul Dixon believes the proposals are indicative of the County Council treatment of Corby in general. How can they even think this is remotely workable, he says. They are now playing with the lives of Corby residents. Anne-Marie Leonard says this is another demonstration of the blind stupidity of the rapidly failing Northamptonshire County Council. Julie Halliday says, I think for a council to even consider this just as a money-saving measure shows a lack of care and imagination which the Corby people will fight all the way. Tracy Bruce says, reducing a life or death service to a growing population is the politics of the incompetent. David Rafferty said, this is another Tory action showing that they care more about profit than ordinary people. Lorraine Shaw says, as usual with the Northants County Council, they are targeting Corby residents and have a complete disregard for life and safety. Rob Maguire points out that Northants County Council's own website presents figures for last year, indicating that Corby Fire Station had the second highest area coverage and incident attended. Richard Sharman reinforces the point that Corby has had 2 fire crews for the last 50 years. Lucille Giola, who works in a local pharmacy and has spoken to lots of her customers about the plans, said she'd not heard one person agree with the proposals. Roger Kinsey asks a good question. If a correct procedural assessment survey actually has been conducted and past statistics taken into account, I very much doubt it, and I've seen no such evidence. Kerry Talon shared her experience with me. She said, having had family and friends involved in house fires in Corby, sadly with fatal consequences, I cannot believe this is even being discussed. Any delays to enter a burning building can and will have dangerous results, not only for the people inside, but also the firefighters. This town is growing rapidly and we can't have our emergency services reduced. Please, please rethink. Ian Chapman says the figures being used for the argument to reduce the number of fire engines are already old, and with the year-on-year population increase, this data is completely unreliable, and there should at the very least be a stay of execution whilst new data is gathered, and this could factor in the future growth of Corby. Now, I appreciate that the Minister will be unable to respond to all the points from my constituents, but I do hope that she's taken on board what they think. I'm sure the Minister was in contact with the County Council before today, as is the usual way of preparing for these debates, and I look forward to hearing from her. But I hope she's challenged them on why they're looking at only one option, and I very much hope that she's not bought into the spin that they're peddling about these proposals. Before I finish, I want to share 3 final comments. These, Madam Deputy Speaker, are from Corby firefighters. They have insights and experience that we should listen to. Sadly, they don't feel valued by the current government, which has failed to find a resolution to their ongoing pensions dispute. resolution that has been found in other parts of the United Kingdom, but not by this government. The Minister has a chance to show these firefighters that on this issue she is listening and does respect their view. Louis Smith said, "As a serving firefighter in the town for some 20 plus years, I can tell you that we have rescued numerous people by the skin of their teeth over the years. Downgrading a full appliance that carries 4 personnel to a smaller appliance with 2 personnel will ultimately lead to the new appliance turning up at an incident one day and the 2-person crew not being able to deploy rapidly to the incident and rescue people." He says, in the skin of the teeth cases, the outcome would have been very different if we had just had this new proposed appliance there at the time, rather than a proper fire engine. Gary Mitchell says the proposals to reduce the number of firefighters, the second pump at Corby Fire Station, is shocking. He tells me, "I've had to listen to the county councillors responsible for these cuts, trying to explain that the Cobra firefighting system and a robot can somehow take the place of operational firefighters. This rhetoric is completely misleading and dangerous to both the public and firefighters alike." He says, "We have had Cobra firefighting equipment on Corby appliances for 5 years. Expert firefighters save people's lives from fire and road traffic collisions, not robots." Rob Martin says the plan to replace a properly equipped fire appliance with the proposed van is like replacing a properly equipped ambulance with a first aid box. In summary, Madam Deputy Speaker, I believe that there are very important reasons for maintaining the current level of capability at the station. Firstly, the risk profile of Corby and the surrounding area. Corby still has a range of businesses within its local economy that present particular risks arising from the nature of the processes and materials used. It was for those historic reasons around the industry and commerce in Corby that the risk was rated higher traditionally, and Corby had always had 2 engines. Secondly, recognition that Corby is growing. This is planned to continue, with the population reaching 100,000 by the end of the next decade. Even accepting the progress made in preventing domestic fires from occurring, the size of the town needs to be serviced properly by the Fire and Rescue Service, because there will be extra demands placed by a growing population. Thirdly, the station supports a very large geographical area beyond the town of Corby, stretching all across the villages up to the county's borders with Leicestershire, Lincolnshire and Cambridgeshire. There are well-documented difficulties with, for example, the fire station at Oundle, which is rarely on the run, rarely able to get its retained crew to be available to be on the run with the fire engine. Maintaining Corby Station's capability is critical to providing North East and Northamptonshire with assurances that a responsive and adequately crewed service is available to meet fire and rescue needs in this part of my constituency. Madam Deputy Speaker, I recognise that councils, including Northamptonshire County Council, have faced very significant cuts. When this government was elected, they told us that their cuts would not impact on frontline services. We all know that's not true. We've seen the cutbacks in social care and Sure Start in roads maintenance. People have put up with it partly because they were told it was needed to eliminate the deficit. But now they know the truth. The deficit's still there, the debt's gone up because the government ground our economy to a standstill for 4 years, and the government have dug a bigger hole, and now they're planning cuts that are deeper and ever more dangerous. Taking away Corby's second engine would become a symbol of this, and it would have tragic consequences. I heard that the Tory parliamentary candidate in Corby is trying to disassociate himself from these fire cuts. He's called on Corby Borough Council to pick up the tab using the new homes bonus, a cheeky move that conveniently overlooks that Northamptonshire County Council receive far more new homes bonus, but even more importantly than that, they have the statutory responsibility to provide a fire service. We don't want a sticking plaster. This is about the security of revenue funding year on year in future years for the second fire engine that we need in Corby to be provided by the County Council with its statutory responsibility. Now, if the Tories ever want to get anywhere in Corby, they should show local people some respect. They should stop trying to treat them like fools. Corby knows where these cuts are coming from. They know exactly who is responsible. And if Tory councillors over at County Hall force these fire cuts through, the damaging, potentially fatal consequences will be on their hands. I hope that tonight the Minister will do the right thing. I hope that she'll use her influence to tell the County Council to think again. Because, Madam Deputy Speaker, there really has to be a better way.